nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away to go. Leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you never run before.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog, an absolute clown account, according to twitter.com. I'm still refusing it to call it.
You're a clown account, or mine's a clown account?
The podcast one. Yours
Right.
isn't. The blog account's not the blog. What did you describe it as earlier this week? What were the kind of parliament,
You're the
paramilitary
provisional
wing,
arm. Yeah,
the provisional arm of the blog.
we've got plausible deniability for almost
That's it.
everything you say.
So there you can hear joining me tonight. We've got Rory Baldwin, editor of the blog. Good evening, Rory.
Hi, how are you?
Rory's the one that just sometimes accidentally gets kind of dragged into the fun that Johnny and I have on Twitter.
Sometimes I drag myself into it. I also get called Cammy quite a lot. I think people like the podcast obviously is relatively recent in terms of some things, and people forget that because obviously the site doesn't do as much. We're quite active now during the World Cup, but we've gone through periods of inactivity, and so I think people just assume that it's just the podcast, nothing else, and you are everything.
I wish I was, Rory. I'm certainly not. I'm certainly not some Irish people's everything this week, and we'll come on to that later.
Yeah.
Johnny and I may have restarted the Troubles the way things are going.
Yeah.
We've sown this
not
between
bad
the
effort
two
for like 3 days.
the two different factions.
I've certainly seen some pictures.
Yeah, yes, there have been some pictures. Craig Manson is on his way. He's getting his tea. If you are watching us at the minute, you'll be watching us live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook. You can also sign up for our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast. And for £3 a month, you help us put this out live, as amongst some other things. And you also get a bonus weekly podcast as well, where we go in a bit more detail about some of the things that have been going on and talk a little bit more widely about the world of rugby as well. It's been a busy week. This week, we've got lots to talk about. We've got Scotland and Ireland at the weekend. We'll go through Scotland-Romania as well. There's not a lot to analyse there, such as it was. But most importantly, what we should talk about, Rory, is Scotland's win over Spain at the weekend in the warm-up for the WXV2. I have to say that slowly to make sure I get all the letters and all the numbers in the right place.
Yeah, which is it's kind of middle tier version of whatever the WXV
is,
which is happening somewhere else.
So for people that are new to this, because we've got a lot of new listeners over the Rugby World Cup, what has happened with in women's rugby, because you don't have the kind of I suppose the embedded traditional touring schedule of the men's game, they've done something different. I suppose it's a little bit really like they've been trying to do with the men's game for years, which is kind of bring an annual competition and a bit of structure to things. So depending on where teams finished in the Six Nations, depending on where teams finished up in other competitions, we have a 3-tiered competition that will take place every autumn. There is the WXV, which is all the top tier teams. Got New Zealand, Wales, England, France are in there. We've got the WXV2, which Scotland are in. So we've got Japan, South Africa, United States.
United States, yeah.
And then you've got the WXV3, which is Italy and some Pacific nations and some others who I forget are in the WXV3. So what I think was interesting, Roy, it was Spain at the weekend, 35-5. Forgot that score. 36-5. That was I literally just finished watching the highlights to remind myself what happened in the game, but I forgot to write down the score. I think what was interesting for me is that Scotland have struggled against Spain in the past. Oh, here's Craig. Craig's going to jog. I'll slowly bring Craig on while we start talking about this. But so Scotland have struggled against Spain in the past, I think. And so for me, what this game showed is just how far this kind of Scotland women's team have come, because it's all very well, I think, in the Six Nations, and you kind of compare yourself to, Scotland ran Wales close, we beat Ireland quite convincingly, beat Italy, and, struggled against France and England as you'd expect. But it's, I suppose, a test against teams outside of the Six Nations really shows where they've got to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was you could tell that from probably the first half, maybe the first half hour certainly, that it was the first sort of game of their season, if you like, as the women's team. It was a little bit sort of scrappy. There was, there were a lot of balls going to ground and things like that. And I think you would almost have thought, okay, well, these two teams are sort of about the same level. But I think in the second half, Scotland definitely pulled away. The things that they were trying were sticking more. There was some good set piece from the forwards, and the backs, particularly the centres, were impressive.
And Craig Manson's joined us. Hello, Craig.
Hello, how you doing?
Have you had your tea, Craig?
No, straight in from the training pitch, battling the weather, and so just got straight on here. So nothing yet. I've got a drink of juice. That's about it.
It's on its way, no doubt.
That's
We're just saying, Craig. Obviously, Scotland, Spain at the weekend, and I was just making the point to Rory that I think it was a good test of where Scotland have got to, because in the past they've struggled against Spain, and obviously it's kind of hard to kind of chart progress in the Six Nations because you kind of keep pace with a lot of the other teams apart from the Englands and the French. So, as Rory said, it was scrappy in the first half, but I think one of the things it showed with the Scotland team, there's two things, was the fitness levels to kind of really keep going in that second half, but also the patience that I think we haven't seen in the past. I think that Scotland teams of old would have had a nervy first half, and then those nerves might have continued into the second half.
Yeah, and you then get players, the older players, or the players that are maybe the more superstar players, trying to do it all on their own, and that Scotland didn't look like that. They looked very restrained when they needed to be restrained, and then they attacked when they need to attack. They have some phenomenal line breakers. They have some fantastic. They've got a lot of team members now who will make a huge difference just with little parts of their game. High pace. And Cammy, I don't mean to say that I told you so, but when it comes to the fact of when we invest money to these and give them their contracts, they concentrate on playing rugby. They don't have other things to distract them. That's the wrong word, but they don't have to fill. They're not just trying to play rugby for Scotland and do a job, etc. They are able to concentrate on, right, we're going to work on today, we're going to work on kicking today, we're going to work on passing. And it's all slowly but surely coming good. And they looked a different team on the weekend.
And one of the things for me, Rory, was I think the return of Rona Lloyd. We've missed her, I think, a lot in the Six Nations. It's not to say the players that came through. I mean, it was an opportunity for Francesca McGee to come through, and what an absolute impact she's made. But to have a back three now, who I would say, like, Scotland now have a world-class back three in women's rugby, Lloyd, McGee, and Rowley. you know, that's a class back to me. That the try that Rona Lloyd scored, particularly, you know, to be under pressure on your own try line in the scrum, and you know, obviously Rona Lloyd gets a lot of praise for how she's finished that off, almost running the length of the pitch, but you know, the patience in the ball handling to get it out to her to release her up the wing. I think that's the point of difference now. We really do have genuinely world class players in the Scotland squad.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, you can see that extra, just that little bit of extra class that Rona Lloyd brings. Suddenly, it kind of elevates the backs, and obviously her ability from GB7s, and to be able to strike from you know, that position on the field inside your own 22. All it takes is a wee pop off the deck. She's got enough space, and she can go the length of the pitch. Which is obviously something probably you'd see a bit more in sevens. You don't often see kind of length of the field tries, but yeah, I mean, what impressed me probably was the two centres, Emma Orr and Meryl Smith. I thought they were both cutting really nice lines. There were some nice kind of offloads off the deck. I think it was one of them that put Rona away for her try. And yeah, it just obviously it wasn't quite working at the start. There was that kind of rustiness, but yeah, once they kind of got things cooking a bit more, yeah, I think, you know, they should be able to trouble teams. But as always with Scotland teams of any kind of stripe, it's will the pack give them that go forward. Obviously they've got Jade Conkle-Roberts to come back in. I think she was helping Matt Banham with the water bottles on the weekend, but you would think she'd probably go into that team somewhere. Straight off, and again, the more top class players you kind of feed in, it brings everyone else's game up, but it kind of just increases the overall level of quality in the team.
And I just want to talk about obviously Emma Orr and Meryl Smith, Craig, and there was a couple of things. I think it was Emma Orr's second try. There was an inside pop pass, and even I think a first try it was a cross-field kick from Helen Nelson, and yeah, you know, gathered by Chloe Rowley, and then it's recycled. But those are the kind of things, you know, when we were talking about them during the Six Nations, was that's what we need to see from the Scotland team, is a bit more creativity, a bit more of those kinds of passes, not just kind of stringing passes together out to the wing and hitting it up. It was great to see them kind of mixing up a little bit and trying something different in attack.
Yeah, and you know, if we go back, a year and a half, 2 years, we were concerned because the passing looked ponderous, and when they wanted to go wide, a lot of defences could read it very, very easily. And now they've got this ability that, you know, what we're always asking for a rugby team is that you don't let the defence settle, because you've got a various range of different passes, different plays, and it is when you've got someone like Emma Orr, you know, you want to use them and look at, if you know, I know we're talking about the women's game and I don't want to take anything away from it, but if you look at the Hua Pilotu sort of, you know, centre partnership and the ability to move the ball between them, and they seem to know each other so well that they can almost read what they're doing. You read what the other person's doing. I think that seems to be coming through with the centre partnership with the women's team. So it's quite an exciting thing to see.
I think the other thing as well, Rory, is the depth now in the Scotland women's team. I think we saw, I think certainly the last few years, it was a very, I mean, you would say it was a settled, you might say it's a settled side on one hand, but I also think it maybe spoke to the fact that there wasn't much competition for places. It was the same players named every time. But, you know, you've got Evie Gallagher in at number 8, and as you said, Jade Conkle-Roberts isn't there. And there's a world-class player right there that we've got, but there wasn't a significant drop-off in quality. You've got the fact that, you know, Ellis Martin, friend of the pod, coming off the bench at hooker and scoring a try, and again, you know, throwing the darts. So there's not a significant drop-off between Scotland starters and the replacements, or even those that are within the wider squad pushing for places. That you've got such a good pool of players now, you can almost kind of switch players in and out without having that drop-off.
Yeah, I mean, I look at, I think it was Sarah Law, was left out the original squad, but got called up this week for an injury. You know, hugely experienced. You've again, you know, having those players who are playing kind of, I mean, most of them are now playing Premiership rugby. We've got the two girls from the sevens, just increasing the level of the training so that, you know, I mean, there are still, there's probably still some younger, less experienced players, but hanging out with these people and training with them, it brings your level on. I think they're starting to show, in terms of the union, that they're putting a bit more effort into the coaching setup with, you know, hiring a name from perhaps outside the kind of SRU setup in Matt Banahan. I mean, I don't know what like he is as an attack coach, but you know, he's obviously done his coaching elsewhere, so he's come from a different setup than the kind of cozy SRU setup you quite often see the coaches being sort of promoted from. And I think it's starting to bear fruit.
Yeah, and the other kind of impact of that, Craig, is that it pushes on the players that have been there for a while now. It kind of, if you want to keep your place, you've got to raise your level.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's. It's funny. I was having a conversation with someone who was saying, you know, it must be a real shame for these players that have been training so hard, and then the GB7s girls come back and they just walk back into the team, and it's like, well, no, actually, you need them to come in and work with the other players because they've experienced a lot more, a different style of coaching, a different style of play, and I think as we've been talking about, we need them now. They're now professional athletes. They now need to push on and drag themselves or work hard and get themselves or scale the mountain of getting to the level of the Red Roses. And it takes a little bit of work from the SRU. It takes a lot of work from the coaches, but really it takes a lot more work from the girls. And they're the ones now, because of the competition that you're talking about, you know, they're either going to sink or swim, and luckily we're now at a situation where we have players in the background who are ready and waiting to take that place if they don't perform. So it sounds harsh, but that's the way of professional athletes, you know.
I mean, the fixtures are, so going into the WXV2, we've got Scotland, South Africa on Friday the 13th of October, USA versus Scotland women on the 20th of October, Italy and Scotland on the problem is, you see, I'm looking at Ultimate Rugby, and I shouldn't do really for these fixtures because it also says that the other game is on the 20th. They're also playing Italy on the 20th of October. Now that can't be right. And then they play Japan on the 27th. One of those dates is wrong. They can't possibly be playing two teams on the 20th of October.
Let me just see, because we've got some new stuff. I've got a new thing on the blog, which is like a tournament view. We've started adding like little kind of matches so that we can tie all our posts together with. So we've got the tournament dates in there. So let me see, 30th September, Scotland v Spain. We've had that. Scotland South Africa 13th of October. USA Scotland 20th of October, and Scotland Japan 27th of October.
So that there's an errant Italy game in the Ultimate Rugby fixture list that I found before.
Yeah. If you look at the fixtures list on the homepage of the blog, there's the tournament names above it. If you click on that tournament name, you should see a list of all the fixtures for the ones that I bothered to fill out.
We have a great question here from Josh Hunter, who says, does the WXV2 lead to promotion from WXV1, or is it solely dictated by Six Nations performance? It is solely dictated by Six Nations performance, Josh. So in theory, it actually makes Six Nations, I think, a bit more competitive, Craig, because there's something to, obviously, I'm not saying the Six Nations isn't competitive, but there's an extra incentive then to, get as high up as you possibly can in the rankings, because that'll determine who you play. But I was thinking about this before we came on, and actually, I think at this stage in Scotland's development as a team, and given what happened in the World Cup, I actually think the WXV2 is the right place for them to be to bring their game on, because they're going to be, they're there or thereabouts. They're playing teams they've beaten before, but have also given them some really good games. And I think they learn more from that, and they'll develop more from that than going and getting an absolute shellacking from France or England or New Zealand.
Also, not to come, to be all Ted Lasso here, but they've got to establish some more belief as well. And just as you say, they need to get some wins under their belt. They need to get used to winning. And I think that, looking at those three teams, they've got a very, very good, they've got a good chance of winning every single game there. So, that will give them a good boost going into the Six Nations, and then it's just a matter of going from there and seeing how they move on. The Six Nations will be the big test.
Yeah, and obviously, again, for those that are new to the pod, we should say this: the Women's Six Nations now is out with the normal Six Nations, and I think that really helps. I think with the exposure, certainly there was a lot more talk around the Women's Six Nations this year because it wasn't competing with the men's for people's attention, and I think certainly below England and France, it's extremely competitive. I mean, you've got Scotland and Wales are really in the mix. I mean, Scotland were unlucky to lose to Wales in the Six Nations. The Ireland are a bit of a sleeping giant. If they can get the men in charge of the game to get their act together, they could be something. So it is in a way, it's a bit more of an exciting competition than the men because kind of after first and second, it is anybody's game.
Yeah, I think, and the point you made about the scheduling, I think that's made a huge difference. Even from just from our point of view, if you took us as an example, it means that our focus is not split. We can focus on the matches. We can talk about them more on the podcast. We can write articles and stuff. So if you sort of expand that around the global game, it's not fighting for the kind of rugby Twitter or social media attention, depending on their clips policy. And I think it's going to make, again, we're going to see as the competitive level increases. Obviously, the WXV is going to expose them to playing teams outside of the Six Nations, which I think is good. That's something that is always good for players in the men's, going on summer tours and things. So yeah, I think it's only gonna help, and having this kind of extra level of, I guess that's what they're talking about with the World League, is trying to give the Six Nations some extra kind of impetus or meaning, which it doesn't really need, but I think in terms of perhaps spurring the union on to support the teams, there's now something at stake for them rather than just kind of 5 games in the spring. So do they want their team to be playing at the top level?
I think the worry for me, Craig, with the WXV tournaments is, I mean, Stella Mills, and if you want to know more about women's rugby, you should follow Stella on Twitter. She's really good at kind of covering women's rugby. She'd put on today that if you want to watch these tournaments, you've got to sign up to Rugby Pass TV. Now, obviously, Rugby Pass is now wholly owned by World Rugby. It's World Rugby's, I don't know, kind of paper of record. Is that the right way to describe it, or is it or propaganda? The propaganda wing of World Rugby PLC. Yeah. You have to sign up to Rugby Pass TV now. If the result of that is that you get to watch it for free, I'm all for it. My worry is they're going to stick this behind a paywall, and at this point in time, women's rugby does not need a paywall.
That's the last thing that women's rugby needs. The disappointing thing, I don't, especially with the women's XV tournament, is that there's nothing on free to air at all. It's access. It's look at the amount of hoo-ha, and I'm sure we'll cover it further down the line, about being unable to share or to see any clips from the World Cup, the men's World Cup at this moment in time. And there's a lot of hoo-ha about that, saying how we're supposed to grow the game and how we're supposed to take advantage of this fantastic tournament. Now, women's rugby is growing far quicker than men's rugby at this moment in time. We have to have it out there, letting people see what's going on, and ultimately attracting more sponsorship and more people to the game. And if we put it behind a paywall, then right at this moment in time, it's just not the right time for it.
Yeah, the announcement is only that it's on Rugby Pass TV. We don't yet know if you're going to have to pay for it or not, but we shall see. We shall see. We'll probably get on to some of the decisions around social media and sharing clips and why that's bad on later on in the Patreon podcast. What I would say though is Rory, one of the great things about the women's Six Nations this year was the use of TikTok, and we've come off TikTok because I didn't really understand it, and my stream was a mess. I had too many accountants in my stream, Rory.
Yeah.
So, but the use of social media, I think, particularly in the women's game, with the way the women were kind of engaging with the fans over social media, was really quite exciting. And I think that kind of goes to show how you can grow the game by viral clips and allowing people just to do whatever they want and kind of, I suppose, expose it to a wider audience.
Yeah, and I mean, interestingly, it's not like us really to praise the SRU, but they are doing some quite good content on YouTube with the men's game and the World Cup campaign, and getting. I mean, there's obviously the kind of cheesy bits to camera, but just the kind of behind the scenes stuff and actually speaking to the players in the dressing room after the game. That's stuff that you don't normally see. So I think more stuff like that. If anyone wants to come and be our TikTok intern that understands both rugby and TikTok, then give us a shout. I think there's definitely a place for it, and there should be a place for it. Obviously, TikTok sponsoring the Six Nations would have helped a lot. So I guess what we need is YouTube to sponsor like the Rugby World Cup or something.
Yeah, and then everyone might get over the fact that nobody can share any clips of this World Cup, which brings us neatly on to the World Cup. There is a World Cup going on at the minute. Not that anybody knows about it, because other than outside of ITV, you're not allowed to post any clips or say anything about it for fear of World Rugby's bots crawling your social media accounts and taking it down. It is interesting, though, I suppose, and we should talk. Let's talk about this for a couple of minutes, though. But outside of the kind of rugby fan bubble, Craig, I don't think anybody knows there's a World Cup going on. I mean, my kids did a thing at school the other day, and I think the teacher just did run out of ideas and said, let's colour in a picture of England and talk about how they're doing this tournament. And the answer was, my daughter very excitedly came back from school and said, Daddy, England have beaten Japan, And I was going, it's not the biggest achievement in the world, but fair enough. It's not quite what I'd be crowing about.
Colouring in a team in white would be quite an achievement.
Yeah, that would be. I think, if they were colouring a red rose, I think, but nevertheless, it's not. I think there just isn't there isn't the exposure. I think if you asked anybody who wasn't a follower of rugby, is there a World Cup on? They'd go, probably not.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is all the reports that we're getting from France is that the French nation have absolutely and utterly grabbed a hold of this and have squeezed it for every single drop out of it. They're having a phenomenal time over there. The stadiums are all fantastic. The apart from some of the trains, the trains and trams being overloaded because some of the stadiums are outside the towns and people aren't leaving enough time to get into the stadiums and things like that. Everything is positive, and it's from what we can tell, it's a really good atmosphere to be there. So it's a real shame that that can't be transferred in some way. For example, we don't, like ITV have got the rugby on the TV, but there's no how can I put it? There's no magazine sort of style program. There's no rugby special. There's nothing going on. Just as you say, Cammy, it's really odd, because if you think about it, my problem is that I'm immersed in rugby, so for me, I know what's going on. But just as you say, it just seems odd,
Can you imagine how much less exposure it would get if they were having to play games at Casement Park, though, Rory? As Craig says, at least they've got the infrastructure in France.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. They had the infrastructure in 2007. I mean, not much has changed. They probably learned some lessons from that. Not obviously all of them. There seems to have been some issues getting in and out of stadiums and stuff. And I've had a lot of people send me posters from around the town that say Stuart Hogg's still the captain and stuff. The kind of local town information boards with posters about each team that's going to be playing in their veal, and there's some of the stuff's not bang up to date because it was presumably printed.
I think
start
somebody was
of the
saying
year
the other day, like the Wi-Fi network on the the underground in Paris is called Anton Dupont. That's what you have to look for. So they've renamed Wi-Fi networks and stuff. So there's a vibe going on. I mean, you can't. I think that's it. You do need infrastructure around the World Cup. You can't just you can't run a World Cup just on crack and vibes. As much as the Irish think they could have done, it just doesn't work like that, boys.
I mean, you can't. For me, I'm sure we'll talk about it when we're talking about our ongoing Twitter war. But for me, you can't have a World Cup where you don't really want anyone to go into the capital of the country because it's too expensive and because the hoteliers are going to gouge the hotel prices, and you also can't do it where the biggest stadium is probably not going to host the final. I mean, are they going to host the final in the Aviva when they've got Croke Park, which can host more people? And I mean, again, it's a political thing with the stadiums and are the public school boys allowed to use this stadium, or are is the GAA going to let you? And Croke Park is a big and impressive state. I was lucky enough to go there and see the Dan Parks beating Ireland game. And yeah, it would be great for a World Cup final, but at the same time, it would be like having the World Cup. If Scotland hosted a World Cup, we wouldn't put the final at Hampden just because it's supposedly the national stadium. We put it at Murrayfield because it's Murrayfield's bigger than Hampden, so it's not the greatest analogy, but it'd be like having, if they did it in England and they put the final at Wembley, surely the final would be at Twickenham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some issues, and go away, think about your bid, and we'll vote for it next time. Probably not.
I mean, so there's somebody, a fair point here from a Facebook user, which is somebody on our Patreon page, saying, compare the ITV coverage to any of the events covered by the dedicated Sky Sports channel for for example, the Ryder Cup. I mean, the Ryder Cup's a good example because all over Twitter this weekend, and I vaguely follow golf, but not enough that any algorithm should be telling you that I want to see more golf. I can kind of roughly check on it from time to time, but all over my Twitter feed this weekend was just all of the incidents, all of the funny little incidents from the Ryder Cup, all of the kind of chat back, all the players having a crack at the stewards, Rory McIlroy squaring up to somebody in a car park. And that's how you break through, Craig. That's how you break through to people that are casual kind of viewers, the once a year during the Six Nations, I might watch it on if it's in the pub kind of people and try and get them a bit more engaged, is that kind of stuff. And there's been lots of that going on at the World Cup. It's just we're not able to talk about it or show it because it just gets taken down immediately.
Yeah, and that's the problem when you let Blazers in charge give Blazers the responsibility of using TikTok and social media. You get to that point where they don't understand it, and they end up doing something stupid like they're doing. You get to a point where you've even got Wayne Barnes trying to show, the guy who's probably going to referee the final.
Because England aren't getting there.
Yeah, well, yeah. Thank you. and you're at that stage where he's putting something up to promote rugby, and they take it down, and it's like just so short-sighted. But
and you could see it coming.
Yeah,
everyone knew it was going to happen as well.
But you know what's? Sorry, I'm getting clawed at by a dog who wants to be up here on my knee. But I think it's just one of those situations where they've decided that Rugby Pass is going to be their rugby TV, and this is the way they're going to control everything. And unfortunately, it's backfired on them because it's not. They've done it far too. Again, they've done it far too quickly. Fair enough,
I was going to say the rumor is it's two national broadcasters in Ireland and France are the ones that don't want things shared on social media, but those two national broadcasters will have come to an arrangement with somebody, whether that's the home union. I mean, it's always Ireland's fault anyway. We'll come on to that, but it's you can't sign deals like that. It just doesn't, because it almost kind of undermines the broadcasters anyway, because if you want more people to watch and to come to your program, you need to show more clips. I mean, the classic one thing, the Romania game at the weekend, there was a point where Matt Ferguson was at the back of a mall, I think, on the try line, and you could see quite wearing a pair of quite dashing leopard skin boxer shorts. That's the kind of thing everyone would have been having a great time with on Twitter. But as it is, nobody dare post anything because otherwise it gets taken down.
Yeah. And same goes for stills as well. Unless
Yeah.
you happen to be in the ground and take a photograph with your phone with an incredible zoom on it. That's the only way you're getting a photograph of Matt Ferguson's underpants out into the world.
Yeah.
Although they did post, the French government did post photos of snipers in the stadium at the rugby. So I assume they're there to take out anybody that gets the mobile phone out to take a photograph. He's got a telephoto lens and a Twitter account, boys. Take him out.
Yeah, if he's wearing a bib. Danger.
We've got to do, Anna, a friend of the pod, says, "Can we see more of Craig's dog?"
Sorry, this is
We have
Beatrice.
Oh,
There's a dog
Beatrice.
there.
So,
It's not a real
Right.
dog, but it is a dog.
Oh, don't you listen to him?
Is this the?
No,
this the
yours
Ron
is a real
Swanson?
dog. I'm saying there's a. In fact, there's two. There's a Dulux one as well.
Right,
Dulux
okay. I thought you
Paul.
were slandering me like we slander Grant Gilchrist and his
And a cat.
Dashins.
What was the? It's the classic Ron Swanson quote, which is kind of like anything smaller than something is a cat, and cats are
Yeah.
useless.
Well, that one.
Yeah,
that
my dog
Beatrice
wouldn't
does
sit
think
on my
she's
knee.
I think Cammy's. Oh, he's back.
No, he's back.
I'm back
he's
again. I
still
froze.
there.
I froze very briefly. I'm back now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the dog's down now. Let's get on with the rugby.
Absolutely.
Very briefly, let's talk about the Romania game. I mean, the team's out, Craig, for the Ireland game, so there's not much debate to be had about who should start and who shouldn't have done. It was a good showing by a lot of second choices. I thought a couple of standouts for me. I thought Ben Healy, maybe a kind of shake, given that's his first start in a Scotland shirt, and he's obviously come off the bench against Italy. First start in a Scotland shirt, did really well. I thought really assured. I've kind of fills me with quite a lot of confidence. I mean, you must be excited the fact he's coming to Edinburgh, but I think for Scotland, it kind of leaves you with that confidence. We've got somebody else coming through.
Yeah, and I think with Ben Healy, what we're doing now is we're solving the problems that have always been levelled at other players within the squad. So we've now got Ben Healy who can pretty much nail every kick through the posts. He is still, he's got a good boot on him for putting it into touch. And he's a steadying force. He may not be the mercurial magician stroke, all the other adjectives you can that you can give to is it adjectives or verbs? Adjectives. You can give to Finn Russell, but he is for someone that can come in and do an exceptional job. I think he's done a great. He's really, and as you say, yes, I'm very excited for him coming into to Edinburgh. The only issue we have is that when you think, well, actually he'll be able to cover for. If Buffelli goes to Argentina, then you've got Blair King who can go to 15 and he's there, but then they're all the way to Scotland's camp. So it's going to be, it's who we've got to back up those guys. But no, I'm happy with what's going on. He's a good player.
I think the other big talking point, Rory, after the weekend was whether or not Kyle Steyn should start against Ireland and Darcy Graham go on the bench. I mean, for me, I still don't get the Kyle Steyn thing. Look, I get that he scored a hat-trick against Tonga, or 4 tries against Tonga at Murrayfield, and everyone got really excited. I think he's a good player, but he's nowhere near the class of Darcy Graham, and people still seem very hung up on he's bigger than Darcy Graham, ergo he's better in the air and he's better at tackling. Darcy Graham's still one of our most physical players, and again against Romania, he threw in some really good kind of sharp tackles to kind of take down some Romania players.
Yeah, I think it's maybe still a kind of it's still a sort of almost like a size kind of prejudice against smaller guys. We think if we're playing a physical team, Darcy's not going to be up to it. That Kyle Steyn, I suppose, is similar to Kyle Steyn's maybe to Darcy what Chris Harris is to Hugh Jones. He's seen as the kind of steady option, the one who's slightly better at defending, maybe okay at the technical stuff, but obviously doesn't have that kind of magic in his feet. But I think Darcy showed not just in the 4 tries he scored, but in the tries that he set up or he was instrumental in creating. His form is kind of undeniable, and yeah, he's not scared of bigger players. So why wouldn't you pick him? Because he offers that kind of jinking class that Hoggy had, in his prime, which is something we need, I think, in our back three. Obviously, Duhan has his merits, and they are legion, but he's not particularly twinkle-toed, and he tends to make his own holes rather than find his way through a hole.
Yeah, and I suppose somebody put on Facebook got the point that Darcy with fresh legs in the last 20, but I suppose, Craig, if you haven't got the luxury, if you're doing a 7-2 bench, you haven't got the luxury of having Darcy off the bench.
No, and I go all John Anderson when it comes to something like this. You have, if you put together either a Northern Hemisphere team or even a World 15, and you don't seriously take a look at Darcy Graham as one of your wingers, he is, for me, he is probably top 3 wingers in the world at this moment in time. Why are we then having a discussion about putting him on the bench? You bring him out and you play him on the wing, and you play him every time when you can. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Kyle Steyn. Kyle Steyn has done a fantastic job, and he is a very good player in his own way. But Darcy Graham, if Darcy Graham's fit, he starts for Scotland, and that's the way it is. He is, and I don't understand the conversation about it.
Yeah, I mean we should look then at the team for the weekend. So it's pretty much full noise, Rory, 1 to 15. Blair Kinghorn is getting his 50th cap at 26. Yeah, that's to me, given Hoggy had an iron grip on that for a while. It's kind of fair play to Blair Kinghorn for getting 50 caps, for the age of 26.
Yeah,
with Hoggy around.
And to think that most of them are probably not in his best position either.
Yeah. So
so I mean,
he'll couple of early ones on the wing, I think, and then he's had a few at fly half as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's about as strong a first 15 as you could pick. Obviously, there are question marks, perhaps, over whether he should have gone with Ben White over Ali Price. He's gone with Price, who obviously has done good things for him in the past. 3-test Lion, Ali Price, let's not forget, he does have some form, but I guess the question is he picking on reputation, which is something that Tooney's going to be guilty of in the past, and we've almost got to the stage, certainly. I mean, you look at that back line, you can't really argue against any of them being in there in terms of experience or form. The pack is pretty much the first choice. There's maybe some discussion about the second rows. I think it's the bench possibly where it looks a bit sort of iffy. I don't know what the word is. It just the bench makes me a little bit uneasy. I
think the thing that's it's worth kind of just talking about Ali Price for a bit. I think the thing for me, Craig, is that Ben White's been exceptional for Scotland. They've really come through and really kind of nailed the number 9 shirt. I think in the last few games, there's been a few wobbles. So I can understand. I don't think you're weakening 9 right now at this time by bringing Ali Price in and having George Horn off the bench. I think there is a bit. Ali Price maybe has a bit of nous about him. I don't think Ben White's in the form he has been in the past right now. That means that you couldn't switch him out for Ali Price and you would see a difference.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you've got a more steady hand with Ali Price. I think it's almost going back a few years, saying, right, well, who are you going to start on? For the big game against England. Well, we're going to put Greg Laidlaw on on the game because he can control the game and he can. He's a good game. He has good game management, etc. My only problem is that Ali Price just seems to be a little bit too slow nowadays, and we don't. The conversation can be had about whether we're getting quick ball from the rucks because of the forwards, and Ali Price would speed up if we're getting quicker ball through the forwards. But I think he's very good at playing Tooney's game plan, whereas maybe Ben White and George Horn are maybe a little bit young still, and they go off and do their own thing a little bit. Whereas Tooney wants the 9 to be very, very prescriptive, I think. But you could debate it all day, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that White got the pick was because he was playing like kind of Lions Ali Price, and Ali Price wasn't.
Yeah,
he was giving that kind of measure of steadiness, but with the speed of pass that we know Scotland thrive on. Ali, I thought, played. He was zipping the passes away against Romania. Admittedly, it was Romania, and we didn't really get challenged at the breakdown much.
Yeah.
If he can do that, but it's an if, and we don't really want too many ifs going into the game.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a question about whether or not it should be whether it should have been Mish on the bench rather than Crosby, I guess. I mean, Mish had a great game against Romania, no doubt, but ultimately, Craig, it's against Romania.
Yeah, and this is I can't. This is a very difficult conversation to have because of Mish and who he is and what he has done for Scottish rugby. But he's now at the point where, if you look at where we are with our back rowers, we need them to be incredibly aggressive. We need them to be big lads. We need them to be go forward players, and I think that's what Luke Crosby brings. He brings a very, very hard edge to the game. And if your forwards are going through the mill a little bit, you want to turn around and say, I need a player on that's going to do, what's the word? It's going to bring a hard edge and come out and put some collisions in, and that's what you'll get from Luke Crosby.
I think that was the frustrating thing after the Romania game, Rory, for me, and just the kind of the kind of lack of quality analysis on ITV was everybody. You got Geach, John Barclay, and Jim Hamilton. And I do rate John Barclay's his analysis. Just talking about Mish needs to come back in. Ali Price needs to come back in. The players that everybody who's watching this know need to come back in. And there's not really any kind of understanding or analysis of the younger players, the players that, as Craig said, might bring a point of difference that people might know about.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the back row. Richie's the captain. He's obviously starting, provided he's recovered from his head knock. Darge is comfortably the informed 7, and Dempsey is the informed 8. There's no. You can talk about bringing Mish in, but who are you going to get rid of out of that group? I think they're pretty well balanced. I mean, Darge would almost be a like for like swap, but I don't think we've seen enough from Hamish kind of over the, that was that one performance against Romania. He looked like he was back to his best, but it was against Romania, and we haven't seen that Mish for quite a while. Whereas Darge has been doing what he needs to do. I mean, for me, I'd rather have an extra back on the bench, but I guess they know Ireland are going to come at us hard, so they're trying to kind of hedge their bets against that, I guess.
Yeah. And I suppose, Craig, the thing as well with this Scotland team, what we've seen so far in the World Cup, and I suppose my worry against Ireland, because although we're clearly going to win, and obviously this is Johnny Sexton's last international game, as we've established, is our attack being isolated at the breakdown. I think that's still a problem that we haven't fixed yet, and it's not something that I saw any evidence we were fixing against Romania and Tonga. And that's my big worry against Ireland. And I was watching back some of the highlights from the Six Nations game against Ireland at Murrayfield, and it was happening time and time again. You got a runner running into Irish defence, and there's nobody there to clear out, and there's cans coming over onto the ball from the Irish side, and it's a penalty for holding on. And I think that's my worry for this weekend. The back row and the forwards are going to have to be so hot on that, and you're going to have a lot of support.
Yeah, the big issue for me is that the referees are not refereeing the breakdown, and they're automatically looking for a lift from the player putting their hands forward. They're too busy looking at the player coming in to take the ball, to jackal the ball, to actually be looking at the players rolling away. And what Ireland are doing at the moment is the tackler and also the support player are coming through the ruck, and they're falling down, and they're taking a very, very long time to roll away. And it's borderline illegal. And what's happening is that they're getting out of the way just before the hand goes up for the penalty. And so the support players from Scotland, if they are actually there on time and when we're expecting them to be, they can't get their foot placement in to drive through the ruck. And so it's don't get me wrong, it's inspired by whomever's coaching the defence for Ireland. But for me, they're very, very close to just being penalised for not rolling away regularly. And so it's just one of those situations where they found this chink in our armour, and they've used it quite well.
So the thing, I suppose, with this, Rory, is we've got to think now as we come to the end of the podcast, kind of, what does Scotland need for this weekend? And it's a mathematical nightmare because we've got to work out all the different permutations. But essentially, Scotland need to beat Ireland and deny them a bonus point of any sort.
That would be the ideal.
That's the ideal.
It's not the funniest possible, but it's I guess the most likely.
The ideal that we just beat them by 8 points or more, and they don't get a losing bonus point. We'd go through. The next scenario is if they get a try bonus point and a losing bonus point, we have to get a try bonus point. And I think even then we're still screwed, right?
Yeah. So I think there's only 1 point in it.
If they get 2 points.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they get 2 points, we're screwed.
We're screwed. So then we have to, if they get a try bonus point, we have to get a try bonus point and deny them a losing bonus point. Yeah. In that scenario. So
we have to get 4 more points than them, basically.
Yeah.
4 more match points.
The funny outcome, as I think, is we get a try bonus point and deny them a losing bonus point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any of those are.
No,
there is.
Yeah. No, isn't it the scenario? Isn't the scenario? No, we can't. So we can't.
As long as the points difference is greater than 4 in that situation.
And here's the funny outcome, though, I believe, is that we get a try bonus point, deny them a losing try bonus point, but they get a try bonus point, and then we both go through at the expense of South Africa if the score is big enough.
I mean, on Kev Miller's ginormous table that is now globally famous, there is only one where Scotland and Ireland go through. There's only one possibility, and that's we get 5 match points, they get 1, and the total points difference that is used is greater than 21. Our points difference over Ireland.
It's greater than 21, yeah. So that has to be a try bonus point.
That's the match fixing scenario that the South Africans are all bumping into.
The actual paid professional journalists have asked.
Yeah, and Pete Horn had to come out and discuss it and deny it and everything. It's like, come on, people, it's crazy.
Yeah.
He said he was briefed before the press conference. I wonder what that conversation was.
Because Pete, you're going to get asked the question on match fixing.
Say, no, we haven't discussed it, and Gregor Townsend and Andy Farrell have never met.
Yeah, first rule of match fixing: don't talk about match fixing.
Yeah, unless it's a double bluff, Craig. Yeah. We're going to talk about it, and then everyone will poo-poo it, and then it'll happen, and we'll go, ooh. I suppose at the end of the day, what has been to kind of sum up the end of this part of the podcast, there's been a lot of talk online about data, about form, about Ireland's run, Johnny Sexton's record against Scottish teams. I think he's on a 26-game winning streak. I think we've seen, though, upsets can happen. And if there's a team at the World Cup and there's a team that's done upsets in the past few seasons, it's Scotland. We've beaten France away. We've racked up some quite big scores against England. There was that the famous 35-35 all draw. I think Rory, you've watched back recently.
I watched that this week because I needed I mean, in and of itself, it's amazing up to about 77 minutes or 78 minutes. If you switch it off, then it's quite a good game. But just to remind myself that very occasionally crazy things do happen in games of rugby. It is possible. We so rarely see it. The number of times that we've gone into Six Nations and things dreaming about this, that, and the next thing, and our hopes are cruelly dashed within about 20 minutes of the first game. Let's look at the 2019 World Cup where Ireland did it to us. Our team completely failed to turn up, But at the same time, sometimes really crazy stuff happens.
And you get things switch, and this for Scotland to win this game, every single person on the team's got to have the game, got to play at their absolute peak for 80 minutes, and that's not impossible. It's not that far fetched that they do that. And sometimes things just click, Craig. I mean, I was looking back earlier at the Glasgow 2019 game against Leinster where it was 35-10 or something like that, and George Horn scored loads of tries, and Johnny Gray put in a record-breaking 43 tackles. These sometimes with a team, things do just click, and this Scotland team have got it in them.
Yeah, we're due a win against Ireland. It's been a while, and where better to do it than at a World Cup? I don't know. The problem is, as we've all talked about, we get carried away. We start talking about things, and then all of a sudden we realise that actually we scored all those tries and all those points against Romania, and we have to think, well, actually and it wasn't like at the first wee while against Romania, it wasn't clicking either, and we just have to be careful. I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to the game. I think we're going to have an opportunity to do something, and I would like to shut some mouths up a little bit. But I just, every so often my head then kicks in and goes, actually, Ireland look absolutely superb at this moment in time. So, we'll
and that's the thing. I don't think they do. I genuinely don't think Ireland do look that superb at the minute. I don't think they've had a proper test yet. I think they fluked their way to that win past South Africa because South Africa missed all those penalties.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't think I'm not saying that this South. Well, the thing is with the South Africa game, what was more impressive to me wasn't the fact of the scoring or anything. It was the physicality, and I hate constantly going on being sound like Jim Hamilton talking about physicality, but the hits, the hard work that was done from both teams was quite staggering, and I guess that for me is something that I'm quite taken aback by, and I'm quite impressed with. So maybe that's what's fueling my what's the word? My tip of the hat to Ireland. But of course they're not going to mark Finn Russell at all. He's going to run riot, and then Johnny Sexton's going to get sent off for holding on to his head when he shouldn't have, and something like that, and then we'll go from there.
That's the dream, though. That is the dream, I think, Rory.
I think, yeah. I mean, and one thing that actually what I did find quite hopeful about the Romania game was, we've seen games like that where Scotland are clearly supposed to, if we want to be at the level of South Africa and Ireland, we have to go out in a game like that and put 80 points on them. And there were some moments in that game where it looked like we might fall off the pace and not, but actually our second string went out and put 80 points on them. They looked like they had a game plan that was pretty similar to the game plan that the first team play, which is not always the case. Sometimes you put on a different 10 and suddenly the style changes. It's consistent. They were playing like Scotland. They went out and ultimately they did the job. They also the main team stuck with South Africa for a good 45 minutes. I think I haven't, Irish podcasts aren't going to talk about it, but I have seen some neutral ones talking about perhaps the weakness could be the Irish front row. Craig would know better than me, but our first choice front row is pretty strong. I guess again, it's the same as with South Africa. Can they withstand the changes off the bench? But there are, as you say, there are little chinks of hope. that we must cling to.
There is always hope, as a wise man once
absolutely.
said.
Absolutely.
So that's it for this week for the main podcast. We'll be back next week with.
We can hear you, Cammy. Carry on.
You can hear me going. I'll carry
Yeah.
on. That's it for this week's podcast. We'll be back next week with a review of the Ireland game. Despite some people on Twitter saying we wouldn't be, we will be back to review the Ireland game and look forward to the quarterfinal against, by the looks of it, we'll be playing New Zealand. So we look forward to previewing that match and paying tribute to Johnny Sexton after his final international game. For the moment, though, and if you're watching live on the Patreon, stick around for the Patreon podcast. For the moment, that was goodbye from me and goodbye from Craig and Rory.
Bye.
Bye.